What's happening, everybody? Welcome inside a Wednesday edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Matt Robinson with you, I was going to say as always, but regrettably back in the TCA studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada, at least for a minute. But at least we've got a good guest to talk to this week. We're reaching out to Calgary, Alberta. Robert Munnich from the Nation Network, writing about the Flames, the Canucks, doing highlights on the Jays. You've got quite a byline, man. Is there anything I'm missing? I know there's some podcasts in there, too.
You know, it feels like I'm like doing everything these days. Yeah, like I write for FlamesNation.ca. I got my own podcast called the Red Mile Rundown. I do the after it's called Afterburner, the post game show on Flames Nation, and the social media manager for the Nation Network. So yeah, I got a lot of different titles. I'm doing a lot of different things, but it's definitely a dream job, and it's a lot of fun. Let me tell you.
Well, one of the things we like to do around here, as we were talking about just before we fired up the mic, is talk a little craft beer. And had you been in town, might have been able to have you in and offer you something. But in the absence of that, I am curious. I know Alberta has done pretty well for itself here lately. Certainly BC has been all over the craft beer scene for a while. Do you have a favorite craft brewery, a favorite craft beer out there, something you might want to tell our listeners about? Because I think I also just heard we're going to be opening up the provincial borders. We'll be able to get some stuff shipped across provincial lines here, so this could be interesting.
About time that happens.
100%.
Holy. Yeah, I mean, so like I just moved to Calgary a year ago. I was living in BC from 2013 to 2025. So I was in BC for a long time. So a lot of my favorite breweries are from BC. So like I'll shout out a couple.
Sure.
One is based out of Vancouver. It's called Stanley Park Brewing. They have this awesome brew pub like right in the heart of Stanley Park. They play live music there, and like they make such good beer. So if you're ever at like an LCBO or beer store or wherever you buy your beer in Ontario, try to find Stanley Park. Another one I'll shout out is Phillips Brewing. They're based out of Victoria, and I went to school in Victoria and lived there for 4 years and drank a lot of Phillips beer. Probably too much. But yeah, they have one called Blue Buck. That's kind of their claim to fame. So I highly recommend that. And then also there's the Fernie Brewing Company just over the Alberta-BC border in the Kootenays here. Fernie Brewing Company, outstanding. They're all over the place here in southern Alberta, and I'm not too sure if they've made their way to Ontario, but those would be probably my three favorite breweries right there in kind of different parts of BC.
Sure, beautiful. Especially, like I said, now that if we're going to be able to start, I feel like I've tried just about every brewery in Ontario. They pop up and disappear so fast sometimes. I'm not sure if I've quite caught them all, but now that we're going to be able to start bringing stuff in from other provinces, there's a whole new world out there to conquer. So we'll keep those in mind. Look, one of the reasons I reached out to you here, and I'd be silly when I have you on to not at least ask your opinion a little later on about the Flames and what's going on out there and a couple of things, but the thing that got me to reach out to you was a piece you wrote for Flames Nation about a week ago on the heels of the announcement from Sportsnet that the price of Sportsnet Plus was going up again. And look, I'm not sure that this is going to be necessarily the straw that finally breaks the back of the Canadian hockey fan, but it certainly is another straw on that back. And you went into detail. It's not just an article about the Sportsnet Plus increase. There's a lot going on that Canadian hockey fans are asked to endure right now. Can you kind of take me inside, what made you decide to put the piece together and some of what you outlined there?
Yeah, I mean, the inspiration for the article is basically exactly what you just said. It just feels like Canadian hockey fans, we've continually been getting a diminished product and a diminished experience as fans. And the Sportsnet Plus price increase for, I believe it's the 5th year in a row, to become the most expensive streaming service, like by far the most expensive streaming service in all of Canada. That really put it over the top for me. And I was seeing a lot of people online who were unhappy about this too. And, I've been kind of having this sort of built up frustration building, I would say, over the last, we'll call it 6 to 7 years here, kind of basically since COVID started. I feel like that was kind of the start of a bit of a diminished experience for hockey fans. And yeah, I mean, I kind of broke it down into three separate topics here, and maybe we can dive into them. But just the first one is just the idea of the cost to be a hockey fan in Canada right now is astronomical. Like with Sportsnet Plus, they're on a monthly subscription, they're charging upwards of $45 a month. Like $45 a month. Like we're talking like over $500 a year for Sportsnet Plus, and that's what happens when you have these large companies that have a monopoly on a certain industry, and that's what Sportsnet has. I mean, between the NHL and the Jays, those are the two biggest sports properties in this country, and they even have some Raptors in there too, which is probably the third biggest. So
this wouldn't necessarily be a Sportsnet specific thing, but here in Ottawa, that doesn't even get you everything. Like, you also have to then turn around and also get TSN to want to watch your Senators or your World Juniors or, you know, whatever else might be going on top of it. It's insane to think how much money you have to spend. And we should point out that at the time you and I were recording this on Tuesday afternoon, we did just hear that Wednesday night will be officially Amazon Prime night, which had been Monday, but they have now got an increased share of this, which includes 2 first-round series and 1 second-round series of the playoffs. So not only are you paying more for Sportsnet Plus, you're getting less for it and now need another package on top of it.
Yeah, so if you're a Sens fan, there's 3 streaming services right there.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're talking, you know, upwards of $80 to $90 a month just to watch your favorite team play. And then that doesn't even include actually going to the games and buying, you know, $100 ticket to sit in the upper bowl or an $80 ticket to sit in the upper bowl. And then you got your $15 to $20 beers and you got your parking and you got your food and your merch. And like, it's becoming extraordinarily expensive to be a hockey fan. I think that sucks. And you know, another thing you could even throw on top of that too is with Rogers and CBC ending their partnership, there's no longer free over-the-air Hockey Night in Canada games on Saturdays. So now, like, there's another way that you're kind of taking hockey away from a certain section of fans in this country. So it's just continuous, and it just feels like it's never ending. And, you know, I was saying on my podcast the other day, like, it almost just feels like we as hockey fans are just looked at as ATMs by these teams. Like we're cash cows for them. It's just the idea of there actually being, you know, some like real value for your fans seems to be eroding right now.
I grew up in the GTA, so don't judge me too harshly, but I am a Leaf guy here in Ottawa. And I used to be like, I still cringe at the stuff that gets thrown at Leaf. And look, I cringe at a lot of things that Leaf fans say too. So this is a two-way street. But the idea, it makes me uncomfortable when other Leaf fans say to the rest of the league, especially, you know, when you're feuding with the Panthers and whatever else, hey, our team is, you know, paying the bills to keep the lights on in your revenue share receiving market or whatever. And I don't think that's an argument that fans need to be having with each other, but it is absolutely legit that the 7 Canadian teams are pulling far more than their weight in terms of what they are putting into this league versus what they're getting back out of it. And the different times you see that start times for playoff games that was clearly dictated by ESPN and not Sportsnet for the Canadian fan and little things like that. Your suggestion there that Canadian fans are starting to feel like an ATM is totally legit. It does feel like we're as passionate about this as anybody, perhaps more than some of the other markets, certainly more than some of the other markets in the league, and we just are punished for it almost.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, with only 7 Canadian teams, you know, with the Canadian teams make up less than a quarter of the league. Yet I think the last revenue projection I saw, it was something along the lines of Canada is responsible for either 1/3 or 35% of the overall revenues of the National Hockey League.
Yeah,
so
I've
you're
seen
right.
it as high as 38% before. Like, it's like I said, it far outclasses what it, what it should.
Yeah, and it just feels like you're almost being taken advantage of in a certain sense, because I think the NHL and a lot of these teams and a company like Rogers, like, they know how diehard, you know, Canadians are when it comes to the NHL, and they know that they're probably going to be willing to pay a premium because they love the game so much. But, you know, like you said, when it's getting to the point where it's like $90 a month, like how can just like an average person or an average family, you know, begin to afford that when you consider just how expensive life is, whether it's, you know, rent and loans and Wi-Fi and your phone bill and cars and insurance and food and clothing. Like, it's just it's just wild how expensive life is. And then now you're just adding on top of it, like, something like with hockey, it's you get away from your day-to-day life and you get away from maybe some of the ups and downs you face, and you can kind of, you know, get in your own little world when you're watching hockey. And like, it shouldn't cost, you know, the average person $90 to experience that a month if you want to watch all of your team's games. Like, I just think that's crazy.
Well, you mentioned there that you had kind of subdivided the article, which we will link to here in the show notes at tallcanaudio.com if people haven't read that before. But what were some of your other conclusions that we worked through here?
Yeah, I mean, the next one I talked about a little bit was just the idea that there's just diminishing media in Canada, especially when it comes to sports, just because, these major companies, whether it's, Bell, Rogers, Chorus, they don't prioritize sports anymore. Like the actual number of people covering hockey is shrinking pretty rapidly. Like right now, here in Calgary, it's pretty crazy. We don't have a TSN reporter right now. We don't have an athletic reporter right now. We have one newspaper writer that follows the Flames. None of the local TV stations, CTV, Global, City News, CBC, they don't send people to sporting events anymore. They used to employ 3 or 4 people in an entire sports division and dedicate shows specifically to professional and amateur sports in the city. And, that's completely gone. So it's just...
Well, the sports radio station, famously here just in the last week or so, or week or two, Calgary and Vancouver.
Yeah, Fan 960's gone.
Right. Like there's less attention. And I wonder what these teams think about it. I know here in the nation's capital, it's been a conversation a couple different times. A lot of people in this market that I know were certain that at the end of the 2026 Senators season, that would be the end of TSN 1200. That was the end of the radio contract. A little Freudian slip there, the end of Brady as well, I suppose. But
yes.
That was the end of the radio contract, and they just simply wouldn't renew it. They would close that station down, much like Bell had closed down several other sports radio stations. Now, they got a new lease on life here. It did get extended for a little bit longer. That surprised a lot of people. Happy for those people. But that has not been the trend on the Rogers or Bell side of it. And I wonder how these teams feel about it. And when I brought up Ottawa, it was to say that I don't know what the Sens would feel. It'd be nice, I guess, to have a little less criticism, but this is kind of a one-horse town. Like, they like the Red Blacks here, right? They like the Charge here and whatever, but the Sens are the king. And here on July 28th, as you and I are talking, there are still Ottawa Senators segments throughout the day on TSN 1200. That is free advertising for these teams. I wonder how the franchises themselves feel about it across the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's time for some of these PR departments and executives there to start to get a little bit creative and start to embrace the digital media landscape a little bit more. One idea I had, and I don't know if this is realistic or not, but I'm almost wondering if some of these teams need to identify 40 or 50 of the biggest social media influencers in their city and target them and invite them to come cover a game and show what the fan experience is like. Like, I think these are like the types of ideas that these teams need to start thinking about, because like in Calgary here at games and practices next year, they'll have their Sportsnet people there, the play-by-play team and the host and Eric Francis. Mm-hmm. There'll be one newspaper guy from the Calgary Herald. We'll have a guy there at Flames Nation, our guy Ryan Pike, but outside of those people, there's nobody that's going to be there. And
It's wild to hear you say there isn't a TSN reporter. Like, when you, in this country, you grow up watching SportsCenter every night or every morning, you get used to Farhan Lalji in BC. Like, no matter where you are in the country, when it's time to talk about the Canucks, it'll be Farhan Lalji after the game. It'll be Jermaine Franklin in Calgary. Like, you work your way across the country that way. Sarah Orlesky in Winnipeg. And now, like you said, to have a major market in this country, not have somebody dedicated on behalf of TSN to the Flames is wild to me, man.
And the city of Calgary and the surrounding area is closing in on 2 million people.
Right.
This is not a small market by any stretch. And to not they might be hiring someone from TSN. I've kind of heard whispers about that. Mm-hmm. So that might be changing here. But literally for the last almost calendar year, we haven't had a TSN reporter here, which has just been wild.
It sounds like Julian McKenzie wasn't replaced at the Athletic, like you said, either. So
nope.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't. And Calgary's an interesting market in the sense that it's a very transient city. We have people moving here from all over Canada. So, if you're moving here from Winnipeg or Edmonton or Vancouver, you're basically bringing your allegiance to the city. And,
sure.
And there's not a lot of people that end up being true Flames fans. So it's an interesting market in that regard, but still, it's still a major Canadian market, right? It's wild. And yeah, from a team perspective, I think it's just the days of just relying on radio and TV and newspaper for your coverage is starting to go. And like I said, now it's time to embrace, new mediums, whether, here in Calgary we have something called like the Daily Hive, or we have a blog called the Win Column, or, we have us at Flames Nation. That's a digital media company. Like those, I think that's the future of media in this country. I think you have to really start embracing it.
Yeah. And I like, to the credit of the Senators, they brought in Ian Mendez here not too long ago, and he did open it up, and he has had podcasters in, he has had some bloggers in, he has opened that organization up a little bit to the media. It can still be done more, and it certainly needs to catch on across the country, but you need some people to be willing to, and I don't know that you need to just throw the doors open to anyone who started a blog last week, right? But like you said, there's got to be a cutoff line that goes, you've been around for a while, we know you have a following, we also know you're pretty reasonable about this, like you're not just somebody getting on a microphone and yelling and screaming all the time. I think there is a way to kind of hand pick a group of, I don't know what the number is, and go, this is, if we want our team's message to be out there and we want them to be getting attention, open the doors a little bit and let some fresh air in here. And especially, it doesn't sound like the press boxes are all that full right now, so there's space to allow some new voices to get in here.
Yeah, you're right. And you have to go through your due diligence, of course. You can't just let some buffoon in there who just speaks nonsense. But like, there are like a lot of people, like you said, who have been going at this for a long time and have built up audiences and a following that I think you can allow in the building to start telling stories a little bit more. And, I think just from afar, just listening to Ian Mendez and just the way he goes about his business, he sounds like a rock star in that PR space. Like I know, he's really helped out a podcast like Locked On Sens,
sure,
who do a great job.
Yep.
And
Coming in hot has a full access there, full great credibility. They can go in, interview players, and those guys have earned it. Like
they just interviewed Steve Stais.
That's right.
That's the cool stuff that I think we need to see more of in this league. And just that kind of leads to the next sort of topic I was thinking about was just it. I feel like there's just less of a connection between teams, the players, and their fan base. And I think one of the big reasons why is just because these teams have these players, for the most part, this doesn't count for every team, but I think the majority of the NHL has these players on lockdown. Like you can barely get independent or digital media companies to get one-on-one interviews with players. Like if you're not a rights holder, you're essentially only allowed to talk to players in scrums these days. And I just feel like that sucks because I just don't think you can tell stories. I don't think you can get to know players when you're standing in a circle with, 6 other people with microphones in their face. I remember back hearing Eric Duhatschek, who used to cover the Flames in the 80s and 90s here. He would say, I would just walk into the room and I would just go and have one-on-one conversations with guys. And sometimes I'd even go for lunch and get beers with them and I'd really get to know them. And then in part, you can start to sort of tell their story and get the fans to know these players a little bit more. And I always say, if you're a fan, you want to cheer for somebody that you feel like you have a connection with, that you feel like you know. And really the only way to do that is to, get them in front of cameras and microphones and do interviews and show off their work in the community and get them to talk about how much they love playing in your city. I just feel like that's also starting to really change. And I think COVID was the beginning of that. I mean, they basically shut off access. Yeah. When that
There's
started.
So much that never came back after COVID, right? They did open the locker rooms again, but it's never been quite the same. They sort of realize, and even some of the sports broadcasts, I cringe hard when I see Sportsnet bring Elliot Friedman on by FaceTime. That never, ever would have happened before the pandemic, and then they sort of got us used to it a little bit. And look, I'm not trying to take a shot at Elliot specifically. There are other networks that do this kind of thing. It just sort of was we started to cut some corners because we had to during the pandemic, and then it just kind of was well, why would we ever go back to the more expensive way, even though obviously the more expensive way was the better way? Bring that guy in studio, make him get up and put on a shirt and come in and talk to you. Yeah,
or at least set that person up with proper gear too, yes. Right? Instead of just going off an iPhone microphone or your AirPods or something like that.
You're on national TV here, let's
totally.
Yeah.
See, even those things have started to kind of go downhill a little bit, and
right.
Even I know, here in Calgary, just an example. There's a player here that I know the Sens have reportedly had interest in, is Zach Whitecloud.
Yes,
right shot defenseman. Literally, just one of the greatest people that I think I've ever seen come through the Flames organization. Just within 30 games, he'd already done probably 8 to 10 different charity events, working with Indigenous communities here. Oh, wow. And I'm that's and he's already become a fan favorite because of it. But I'm like, tell his story. Like get White Cloud and get guys like Devin Cooley, who has an amazing personality. Like get them in front of cameras and get them talking to media and show off those personalities and let fans get to know them, because I think that's how fans develop a stronger relationship with teams and players, is through that sort of stuff. And yeah, it just feels like that doesn't really exist anymore.
It's interesting. Like I look in Toronto and I see. I don't know whether the team deserves any credit for it whatsoever, other than saying it's okay. But William Nylander starts up his own YouTube channel, and like that'll speak to a generation. That'll get you to a point. Like my nephew talks about Willie all the time, and like just if you want to reach people where they are, you have to get out there, and you have to. And like I said, I don't know that was a team initiative. That was a guy with a personality going, "Yeah, that might be fun. Let's try something here." And all of a sudden, you kind of get to see a different side of now Willie's a different cat. I don't know how many other NHLers want to go out and start their own YouTube channel. And frankly, the idea of NHL players starting podcasts is a sore subject here in the nation's capital. But, there's different ways to go about it. But you are going to have to change. It can't just be, the weekly column from the well-known name in your market. And it doesn't work that way anymore.
Now, do you think that there's a way to make the podcast work? Because, like you said, I know it was a roller coaster ride last year between the Kachucks and Ottawa. But
yeah.
Do you think that there's a way for player podcasts to work this day and age?
Look, you got to be willing to put yourself out there. I think part of the thing that got Brady some flack here was that he would come back and not understand why certain things had been frustrating. So, when you would talk about his ice time, and it was his dad who brought that up, and Matthew would laugh and Brady would kind of cringe at the other side of the table or whatever. Brady hadn't said anything crazy, but you can tell at some point that has been a conversation around the Tkachuk family dinner table, and it's your podcast. Somebody can look at that before posting it and going, you know what, that 2 minutes is a headache nobody's going to need. Let's just slice that out. Now, it makes it a little less real to the listener, but it would have saved everybody a lot of headaches. And I think half the problem for Brady, when he would come back into the locker room and someone would say, like, are you legitimately unhappy with your ice time? And I never said anything like that. I don't know why you guys are making this such a big deal. If you're going to do this, you have to understand that it's going to be out there and you might be asked about it. So I don't know, like we see it more in the NBA. I think it's a culture thing in the NHL, like so many other things, right? It's all about team first, and you don't throw anybody under the bus, and your interviews are boring, and we all gave it 110%, all this stuff. They're different cultures. I think we're inching in that direction very slowly in the NHL, but I think this one was, like, I don't get the sense Matthew's taken any shit in Florida over it.
Zero.
Right. So I think it can work. It just, you sort of have to be prepared for the blowback that comes with it. And I think that part got away from Brady a little bit.
Yeah, and I understand if you're a team, like I get that in today's climate, if one of your players just says something that maybe crosses a line or it just comes across as maybe inappropriate or something along the lines of that, like with Keith, talking about the injuries,
yes,
with Brady and Matthew. Like, I get that they're very sensitive towards those things, but at the same time, I feel like you can teach these players, like, hey, here are the topics that are completely off limits, but if you want to go and tell, like, an innocent story about a time on the road, or you want to talk about your teammates and, how great they are in the locker room, like, almost use it as, like, I don't know if I want to call it propaganda, but, like, kind of like that. Like, it doesn't have to be controversial or anything, And like you said, all you have to do is just edit out some of those parts. Like,
sure.
I'm shocked that Brady and Matthew kept particularly the injury thing in that one podcast. I think that was the one that really kind of blew up in their face.
No, 100%. And there would be little jokes here, like I think it was Keith who asked Brady, hey, when's your contract up again? And yeah, and Matthew's like, hey, we'll talk, right? And like just little things like that added nothing to the conversation and created a pile of headaches. Just snip that out in post, man. Like that didn't have to happen. That's just irresponsible, and it's silly to think you weren't going to be asked about that when you got back into your own locker room here.
Totally. And yeah, have those conversations off mic. Like, I guarantee you, like, NHL players are talking about that kind of stuff all the time.
Of course.
Just don't do it on mic when you're going to offend an entire city that's treated you incredibly well, in an organization that's treated you incredibly well. I was surprised by a lot of that stuff. I guess, like, another thing we could even talk about is just the overall quality of broadcasts these days. Like, I really think ever since Rogers took over the national rights back in, I think it was 2013 or 2014, I feel like particularly the national games have really gone downhill. Like, especially when you look at the job that Amazon has done over the last couple years, whether it's their picture, whether it's the sound, whether it's the play-by-play team, they've really stepped their game up. And I think with Rogers having this monopoly and no competition around them, I feel like they kind of got a little bit complacent here. And I go back to like the kind of the late 2000s, early 2010s. Think about the broadcasters that CBC and TSN had on those national feeds, whether it's Gord Miller and Chris Cuthbert, and then you had Jim Houston and Bob Cole and Mark Lee and Rick Ball, like elite
Don
of
Whitman
the elite.
Back in the day. Like
Don Whitman.
I'm a little older than you, I think. So, but you're right. It had a different flavor. You watched your regional broadcast during the week, and then on Saturday we all come together. And I think that's part of the problem for Sportsnet is now if you are a market that is a Sportsnet market, your games all feel the same. And
correct.
Even if they're not bad broadcasts, and look, I'm not suggesting everything Sportsnet has done has been great. I don't think it's all been terrible, but it does all feel the same. And I wonder how much of it, when you talk about the Amazon Prime thing, because I'm with you, I see nothing but positive reviews, and I enjoy watching their broadcast. Is it a far superior broadcast, or is it a breath of fresh air after 12 years of watching the same thing every night?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a bit of both, right? And, another thing that's kind of bothered me a little bit about Sportsnet is just I understand the place that these gaming companies have and these sports betting companies have in the marketplace. Like they're essentially the lifeblood for a lot of sports media companies and a lot of podcasts. Like they spend a lot of money, so I get their importance, but at the same time, it feels like a lot of these intermission segments in the pregame show, it's a lot of gambling content, and it almost feels like that's kind of taken away some of the storytelling. Like do you remember the segment that Hockey Night in Canada used to do? I think it was called Inside Hockey, and Elliot Friedman. Yeah. I think he would
Chris
fly
Simpson would do it sometimes.
Exactly, yeah. And they would fly to certain cities and they would tell the story that's happening in the local market. Like the one that always stands out to me is Friedman went to Vancouver to talk to the Sedins about their charity work, and they just donated $1 million to the BC Children's Hospital. Yes. Like those stories aren't being told as much anymore, and I think a lot of it just has to do with complacency, sports betting, and just different kinds of content. You mentioned the Saturday
Hot Stove. Yeah, and you mentioned Eric Duhatschek, who was a staple of the Saturday Hot Stoves back in the day, and even that would give you a chance to hear from John Davidson in New York and Duhatschek out west, and there'd be different guys that would rotate through, and some weeks were better than others, but you would get this perspective from across the league, and a lot of it would be kind of what direction are some of these teams hoping to go, and some kind of trade rumors, and I know Elliot still does that element of it a little bit, but there would also just be what incident just happened in Calgary that may be suspension worthy, and you get a couple different perspectives. Like, it just provided some variety, and it felt unique to what you saw during the week. You would kind of come together on Saturday nights, and there'd be a couple different games depending on what region you were in. But during the intermissions, we'd all sort of come together and get this perspective from across the league. Anything that just feels different. And now you watch, and it's largely the same panelists on Saturday that it might have been on Thursday, and so there's just kind of this, I don't know, it just feels bland a little bit.
Yeah, there's no innovation, or there's no kind of excitement, or there's no, like, I don't necessarily watch the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast and think to myself, like, wow, like I learned a lot there, or like I learned something new about this person or this player. I mean, I think Kevin Bieksa does an extraordinary job, especially when he breaks down the X's and O's. I think it's fascinating, and I'm like, we need more of that.
Sure. Well, and I like the segments where he and Jen Botter will end up going at it a little bit. Like, they obviously see the game a bit differently. That's interesting to me. But there's just, otherwise, there's some personalities that have been there a long time, and I don't know. I feel, again, it sounds like I'm picking on him because I've brought him up for the second time here. I think Elliot's a little overexposed. We get the podcast now. We get the Saturday second intermission thing. He's on a lot of midweek panels. Like, at some point, this is your rumor guy, and I get that, but Bob McKenzie wasn't everywhere all the time for TSN, right? Like, he was kind of being brought out for special occasions, and I don't know. That's just one name. It's one thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that Amazon has now been given 12 years. It might be a bad thing in terms of how many different platforms the fan is going to have to subscribe to, but I do think it also gives Amazon some freedom to continue to invest and continue to get better and continue to pour resources into this, knowing it's not like a 1 year and we'll renegotiate with Rogers and see how it looks kind of thing. It's now 12 years we have this. it gives them some freedom to invest a bit.
Yeah, 100%. And, hopefully that competition will help push Sportsnet in maybe a bit of a different direction and get back to having like distinguished segments and more debates and interesting conversation rather than kind of the mundane, let's go around the table and someone's going to say 1 point about one game and then someone's going to say 1 point about one game and it's 3 minutes of just like very baseline analysis. Like I want like more like detailed, like Bieksa does. Like I think there was one during the playoffs where he was breaking down the penalty kill and the angle shot blockers took to take away the left side of the net so the goalie could have the right side. I'm like, that's fascinating. Like I had no idea that was a thing. And like that's like the kind of the stuff I want to see. So it is interesting. We will link to the article in the show notes here at tallcanaudio.com. If you haven't seen it, it is worth a look. Like I just this week had a kid in my life. He turned 12, and I asked him, what he wanted for his birthday, and an NHL hat. And we went on Lids together and to take a look. And I'm happy to do it, but a hat used to be $29. It was now almost $50 for just a hat for his favorite NHL team. And you're kind of like, you throw it on the pile, right? Like it's streaming services, it's jerseys, it's like you said, just to get hot dogs and whatever else. But I would be remiss here while I got you, man, to not ask you a little bit about the Flames. I'm curious, just quickly, I guess, before we get to the actual team. Last week we did see the schedule release, and I saw a little bit of grumbling online about the fact that this being the last year of the Saddle Dome, they're not closing out the season at home against the Oilers. It is the Canucks, so it's not like there's no rivalry there. For you, did that seem like a big deal in the market, a missed opportunity, or, is the Canucks kind of close enough? There's been enough playoff battles that works as well. Yeah, I mean, if you look at modern Flames history, they've had 2 playoff series against the Canucks and only 1 against the Oilers. So, that the 2 rivalries are fairly similar. So, yeah, I don't think closing out the Dome against the Canucks upset too many people. But, if we're talking about the Battle of Alberta, I think what really upset some Flames fans and Oilers fans was that there's only 4 Battle of Albertas this year. They're all on weeknights.
Oh, really?
There's not a single Saturday night, 8 p.m. start at the Dome or Rogers Place, for the Battle of Alberta.
Make it easier to go city to city and invade a little bit too, right?
Yeah, like our buddies up at Oilers Nation, we were talking and their idea was to get a couple of school buses and send down, 60, 70 Oiler fans on a Saturday night and come battle it out at the Saddle Dome. Like that would have been a lot of fun, but
100%.
I think it's like a Monday, a Tuesday, and 2 Wednesdays. Like that's a missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
And then, I know I think there's only 6 Hockey Night in Canada, like Saturday night broadcasts at the Dome this year. Like, those are my favorite games to attend. Those are my favorite games to watch, are the late night ones. And I think a lot of Flames fans feel the same way. So to only get 6 of them this season was a little bit of a letdown. But other than that, it was, it's a pretty normal schedule. And actually, the kind of the interesting thing about the season finale is that could be a battle for the 32nd place, for the best overall odds to get the first overall pick between Calgary and Vancouver. So there actually might be some stakes on the line there.
Perhaps not the kind everybody's hoping for, but certainly a meaningful game.
Yeah.
What is the state of the Flames right now? I know there'll be a lot of people looking at Zane Parekh. That's the name that all of us know across Canada, certainly. But, what you just suggested that 32nd place is a possibility this year. What would be considered a successful season for the Flames this year, and what are fans expecting?
I guess, it depends on who you're talking to. I mean, if you're talking to people that work for the team and the players, I think a successful season is to be as competitive as possible and push for the playoffs. If you're talking to diehard Flames fans, a successful season is to literally finish in deadlines.
Okay.
And because the team's at the start of a rebuild, and Craig Conroy's done an excellent job stockpiling a really impressive, talented group of young prospects here.
Yeah.
But they're still missing like the guy. Like the Tim Stützle or Jake Sanderson in Ottawa. And they might have that with Carson Karls, but like they're missing the number 1 center. And if you look at this upcoming draft class, there's about 3 or 4 high-end potential number 1 centers. And I think if you're a Flames fan, you just want to give yourself the best possible chance to pick in the top 3. And the best way to do that is to finish at the bottom. And there are still some interesting storylines to follow. Like you said, Zane Parekh, like the fans love Zane Parekh here. At the end of the season, they're going to sign Carson Karls, Cole Reshny, Ethan Wittenbach, who led the NCAA in scoring as a freshman last year.
Wow.
And Colin Potter, another first-round pick. All four of those guys are going to be signing their pro contracts at the end of the season. So that's going to be exciting. And, they have good goaltending, and they have, just acquired Simo Nemec, and a forward like Matt Vegridin could be a 50, 60-point guy. Like, there's
what
still
did
some
you think of the
exciting things to watch.
Nemec, what they gave up and what they signed him to?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely loved it, because they didn't give up any of their own first-round picks, which are going to be extremely valuable, and they're probably going to be in the top 5.
Yeah.
They moved picks from Colorado, which will probably be a late first, a pick from Vegas, probably a late first, and then a second. The percentage chance of those picks turning into a player of Simo Nemec's caliber, I think, is significantly lower than what you're going to get from Nemec, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they had the surplus of assets, and they used it to bring in a 22-year-old, a former second overall pick who never got a true shot to show what he can do in New Jersey. And now he's going to be, I think next season, he's literally going to be the Flames' #1 defenseman. He'll probably play 22 to 25 minutes a night, and I think he's the type of player, if he gets those types of minutes, I really believe he can break out and be a legit top-pairing guy. So to give up just those late first-round picks. What did they give him?
It was a 7.25?
I think it was 7.25 for 5 years.
Like that, all of a sudden, if he's, I know he's aiming for higher than this, and he was kind of blocked a little bit in New Jersey. But even if that guy ends up as a legit, like offensively talented second pair, top 4 guy who can play on a power play, that's easy money now. The way the cap is exploding, like it's taking a while for us to be able to wrap our heads around what these numbers mean. But $7.25 million for that guy is going to age beautifully.
100%, yeah. With the cap just skyrocketing here, I think it's a great deal. I wish it was for more years, because
Sure.
I'm a big believer in the player. But all of a sudden, like the Flames goaltending and the Flames blue line is set for the future. It's now they got to round out that forward group, and they do have a lot of really good prospects with the potential to be difference makers, but they are still missing those like 1 or 2 like capital D dogs, like a Kachuk and a Stutzel sort of thing. They still don't quite have that yet.
Last thing for you then, man, quickly as we wrap up. I know you also do some of the highlight work for the Jays. What are you expecting ahead of the deadline? How deep are they going to cut?
I mean, I don't know how deep they're actually going to go. I think they should go very deep. I know Ross Atkins, he's known for making, I think, at least 3 trades every single deadline since he's been here.
Yeah. And in 24, they unloaded basically everybody that wasn't tied down.
Which is what they should do this year.
Yeah.
Just build for next year and beyond, because this year is a complete write-off, unfortunately. But yeah, like Kevin Gausman, Dalton Varsho, Shane Bieber, I think you have to move at least those 3, and then, move some relievers on top of that. Like, make it a full-on fire sale, because they're not coming back. They're not coming back. They're not playing well enough. Vladdy has been a mess this year. All the guys that you needed big-time contributions from, they really haven't got it outside of a couple guys like Dylan Cease and Louis Varland and, those types of guys, Kazak Okamoto. So it's a mess.
He's got total control. I would see if George Springer is interested in going to Boston, right? Close to home.
Totally.
And his bat could still play in that ballpark, certainly. I would have that conversation, because otherwise he doesn't have to go in. I think he just had another child here not too long ago, so maybe that would be the only place he would even consider going, and he's earned that right as a 10-5 guy. But that would be a conversation I'd have as well. And look, it sucks. Like, all these guys had monster years for the Jays last year, and the playoff run was so much fun. It's been a little heartbreaking to watch Kevin Gausman say as many times as he has, it's not going to be as good anywhere else, and I don't really want to leave. And yet, as a business, you got to do it, right? But it's going to be tough to watch them out the door.
For sure. And, they gave us great memories last season, which was fantastic and completely unexpected, and you respect all the work they did for the Jays, but I think it's time to turn the page. It's time to move on and just get some assets for these guys and open up some cap space and give yourself some flexibility for next year, because they still have some good pieces. Like I really believe if Ross Atkins goes out there and has a good offseason, the Jays can get right back in the mix. Especially if Vladdy can turn things around and Kirk can get going, and all those Barger's healthy, all these sorts of things I think can add up. I think they can be a good team again. It's just this is just not their year, unfortunately.
Cursed season for sure. Robert Munnich, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this. It was good to have you on the show. Hopefully we can do this again. But tell the good people where they can find your work. As many things off your long byline here as you want to shout out.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm a sports and sports media nut, so it's so much fun to be able to talk to somebody that has similar interests. So that was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, just you can follow me on Twitter at Robert_Munnich. And yeah, you can find my work at flamesnation.ca. And I run the socials for Flames Nation and Canucks Army and Blue Jays Nation. So if you're a fan of any of those teams, be sure to follow those as well.
Thanks so much for doing this, man.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Our next show will not be Monday like it typically would because of the long weekend. It'll drop Tuesday morning, and we'll have our buddy Steve McLean from the All 60 CHL podcast. We'll talk to him about some of his travels across the junior hockey landscape this year. And, of course, he is based in Hamilton, where pro hockey is coming in hot this fall with both an AHL and PWHL franchise. We'll get his takes on those, so look for that on Tuesday morning. For Robert Munnich, my name is Matt Robinson. Thanks so much. We'll see you on the next one.